Welcome back to another episode of the I in Kind podcast. I'm your host, Ethan.
And I'm your co-host, Everett. How you doing, Ethan?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Living the dream. Can't complain. Today's podcast is sponsored by Stand for Kind. Take a stand against bullying in your school and visit www.standforkind.com.
Building quality relationships throughout life takes time and effort, and it can be especially difficult for teenagers. Everybody wants friends. Me too. Having quality friendships is a sense of belonging. The right relationships can lift and strengthen our mental health and bring positivity to our lives. But how can we find and build those quality relationships, and how can we avoid the unnecessary drama that certain relationships can bring?
Joining us as our guest today is Jason Hewlett. Jason is a member and speaker of a Hall of Fame and author whose latest book, The Promise to the One, inspires the reader that ultimate commitment is the promise one makes to themselves to discover their purpose and gifts and share them with the world. Welcome to the podcast, Jason.
Thank you, guys. Good to be here with you.
So I'm just going to go jump right out of the gate and ask $1 million question for this podcast. How can we as teenagers build healthy relationships?
Well, I think it's true for teens or adults or anybody really across the board. I think it starts with being interested in other people, to find out about them and to ask questions like that. So then we create really this nice relationship of trust right up front to see that somebody's interested in us. And I would say that, there's an old book that's kind of an embarrassing title, but maybe you guys have heard about it and talked about it before. It's kind of like one of the first self-help books. It was called How to Win Friends and Influence People. You're shaking or nodding your head there, Everett. Have you heard of that book?
Yeah, I have. And actually, right as you said that, that's one thing that I've remembered, because when I read that book for the first time, the first thing that jumped out to me out of that entire book was to be interested, you have to be interesting. And then I also had, classes at, some school things where it was like a social class almost. And they went over a slide over that. And they taught us that being interested is more than just talking to somebody. It's asking them questions about what they tell you. Actually listening and having a response is being that interest. And then since you're interested in them, they want to be interested in you back.
Well done. Yeah, I'm glad you've heard of that book. I love that you remember interested and interesting as well, because it's true. We want to be interesting, but we got to be interested in others and find out more about them. And so, yeah, that book is interesting. You ought to go check it out if you're listening and you're like, I would never ever hold a book in my hand with the title How to Win Friends and Influence People. But I handed it to my son. My son is turning 14 this Sunday. I handed it to my son a couple of months ago and I said, hey, check this out. Just flip through it, see if anything resonates with you. And he flipped right to the part where it talks about the most beautiful sound in the world to every single person is the sound of your name. And he was like, I never thought about that. And he said, I've been working really hard to memorize people's names in my class, and it seems to make a difference. And, I don't know if you guys have noticed that, Ethan and Everett, and what you guys do, but when somebody says your name, it changes the way that you respond to them. And so if we want to build deeper relationships, or even just start a relationship with somebody as a friend, to learn their name, to say hello, to be interested in them, those are some of the best ways I would say that we do that well. I remember the first time my dad gave me that book, because it's an old book. And he said, hey, try this book out. I started reading it and I was like, this is embarrassing. Look at this cover. I don't want to win friends, And then I started to realize this is really powerful stuff to find out how we can be kind to other people. And, some people do it natural. Other people are maybe just a little bit more, I hate to use the word introverted, but, some of us are more introverted where we're like, I don't want to have everyone coming at me, talking to me. But in reality, they do want one person at least, maybe not a whole crowd. And my son, Redford, turning 14, I told him, I said, you naturally win friends easily. He said, how? I said, well, I remember when you were little and we'd go to, some health food at McDonald's. And he would literally walk into the play place. He'd be like, "Hey everybody, I'm here at the play place." He was like 3 years old, his diapers sagging on the ground, and he's like, "I'm pretty cool." And then he would see other kids that were there, whether older or younger, and he would go, "Hi, want to be my friend?" And they were like, "Yeah, what's your name?" "I'm Wedfode." That's how he said it. And they'd be like, "And I'm Danny." And he'd be like, "Okay, let's go play." And so I just found that so endearing that a 3-year-old would kind of start their life just naturally that way. "Hey, you want to play?" And I know as a teenager, you probably aren't saying that to your friends. You're not like, "Hey man, want to play?" But you're like, "Hey bro, want to hang out?" And when we invite others, when we're interested in them, when we know their name and know more about them, that's how we start to build those relationships.
Yeah, it's definitely something you want to make sure you're engaging with. And usually friendships that come naturally, engaging with them is something you want to do, and the friendship just kind of comes easy there.
Totally right.
I like how you brought up the point how, once you read that first title, you're like, I don't really want to read this. Like, I don't want to win friends. I want to be able to just get them naturally. I want to be myself and do that. And that's not like what the book is about. I had that same first opinion when my mom put it right in front of me and was like, "Here, this might help you." And again, I was 14 as well. Middle school is probably the worst time for all of us socially. So for that book to be put in front of me, I didn't really like it. I was like, I just want to be myself. I don't really want to read this. But then eventually I was in this big friend group, and I kind of got bullied a little bit in it. They pushed me away, and I got singled out in the group. They didn't invite me to anything anymore. And I was like, you know what? Let's take a shot. So I opened up that book and I read that first page. And once I went, all the way through it, it's helped me a lot. I've got to where I am now, to where not saying that it's super easy for me to get friends. I mean, it's really hard for a lot of people to get friends, me included, but to the point to where I can like you said, be super open about it and be like, "Hey, what's your name? What are you doing? Let's hang out." Finding friends that way, that book has been a huge help for me, because not only has it showed me a way to be open with people, but it also shows a way that I can be myself while being open to these people and using these principles that are within that book.
Dude, that's a great response, Everett, and I appreciate that. And I'm sorry to hear you got bullied in the group, and I, for some reason, this is a thing that is happening more and more. I'm seeing it with my own kids, and it's heartbreaking, of course. And I think that's why Stand for Kind is so important. And this podcast is important to talk about those things. And I appreciate you sharing that openly with the audience, because, a lot of people might think, well, he's famous. He's a podcast host. He has no problems. He's, that sort of thing. But man, we all go through that sort of thing.
I got oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Heath.
I always got attention at school because people knew I had a YouTube channel. People knew I was associated with more popular. They like power. They like popularity, and I just wish I would get that same response from those people, just because they saw me and just me.
Exactly. That's a very, very wise thing you've just said. A lot of people, just because you have that sort of celebrity or something that they feel might, make you kind of cool because of it, you're like, hey, it's not really me. Like me for me. And the importance of knowing how we can help others to be embraced for who they are, that's of the essence, in my opinion. So one of the ways I teach it, you guys, if you want to hear it, is I call it the ICM process, which helps people to identify, clarify, and magnify their gifts. So it's a very simple thing. So if I were to say, hey, Everett or Ethan, what do you identify are some of your gifts? What do you think you're good at? I was talking to Everett earlier. He's like, I'm a hockey player. I love hockey. And I'm like, right on, man. Why do you like hockey? You remember that was what we talked about, and that's the direction it went. That's a very simple conversation, but at least I now know a little bit more about Everett. He identifies as a hockey player. He does a podcast. He's in the high school that he really enjoys. He's got cool friends. Ethan, what do you feel are some of your talents? Obviously, you're a YouTube guy and you've got some other things going, but what else would you tell somebody?
Well, I appreciate you asking. I have a lot of passions. I'm on the autism spectrum. And I have so many hobbies. It's just crazy. And being on the spectrum has allowed me to be very passionate about them. Right now, I've been solving Rubik's Cubes really fast.
Oh, wow. Have you seen those documentaries that I've seen on Netflix and stuff with the the crazy fast Rubik's Cubes guys? Is that what you're going for? Are you doing like the big Rubik's Cubes or the little ones or what?
I'm doing I have a huge collection. I have both big and small cubes. And the dude that you probably saw being interviewed most, the dude with the Australian accent, his name is Felix. I got to meet him at a competition, at a local competition, and it was taking a picture with him. So many people were like, "Holy crap!" And I'm like, "I know." He's possibly the best out there. So.
Well, what's interesting about you getting to meet him, that's what I liked about the documentary. I mean, he's really mastered life in terms of being a relationship person, right? I mean, he was willing to talk to everybody and willing to mentor others, and that's what really was special about that to me. Yeah. So that's cool, Ethan. I love that. Everett, what else? You got hockey? What else you got going on? What else are you good at, man?
I actually really enjoy video. Like I said, I had that switchboard thing that I run, and I'm actually the tech director of all broadcast equipment at my high school. So, yeah.
See, you guys continue to kind of open up the box of all of your talents and gifts. And I bet that it makes you feel good to talk about it with me because, it's like, yeah, this is what I am. This is what I offer. This is what I like to do. And so with ICM, identify, clarify, magnify, you've just identified the first step towards knowing what your promise is to the world, to share your gifts. Clarify, the next step is, I would ask somebody that I know what my gifts are. So Ethan, you might be, willing to ask your parents or your teachers or your friends and just say, hey, what do you see in me that I may not see in myself? And when I've asked somebody that in the past, because I identify that I'm a funny guy, let's say I'm funny. I've asked my friends, what do you think of me? And they go, yeah, you're funny, but you're actually hilarious. So they gave me a better word, if that makes sense. It's interesting how people see us. We don't even see it in ourselves. So identify, clarify, magnify. When we magnify our promise, we have better relationships. And it really is amazing when we implement that as teenagers, especially. Because think about it, Everett. Let's say you really are great at video. I bet you are. And think about it, Ethan. Maybe you're a great problem solver because you're so able to think through the Rubik's Cube situation and, all those different patterns. Maybe you're a great problem solver. You guys very well may have already found your great gifts that will take you into your careers in the future.
I feel like I've already planned the next 20 years of my life.
Really? What do you got? Tell us, Ethan. Come on, let me hear it.
All right. A big passion of mine, more than Rubik's Cubes, I would say is studying reptiles and amphibians. It's called herpetology. And because YouTube has been such a big influence on me, I want to put those two passions together and make an entire channel about that called Snake Ed. They're just such misunderstood creatures. And later this year, I'm planning on just kind of driving down, meeting some friends, looking for snakes, finding as many different species as I can, and talking about them, and just kind of showing people and telling people things that they didn't know. That way their fear goes away and they gain more knowledge about it. Knowledge is the opposite of fear.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done. That's very unique for someone your age to be able to be like, this is exactly what I'm doing. I know where I'm going, Good for you. That's so cool. And Everett, don't want to put you on the spot, but dude, do you have some plans? Do you think you know where you're headed?
Yeah, so like I said with technology, the reason I'm like, the tech director at my school is because I understand technology super well. So like there's 12 inputs, 12 outputs on this thing called a video deck, and I know how to route each one, how they work, and how to convert different signals and stuff like that. I was just really good with the hardware aspect of computers and anything technology. So I kind of went deeper into that and kind of figured out like what outside of film has to do with a lot of computer hardware that's not, like computer building. So I did, kind of dug into it, and I found that aviation actually deals with a lot of computer hardware. There's stuff like an APU, a glass cockpit, anything avionics based has to deal with some sort of computer or like pressurizer. So I was thought that's really cool. I've only been on a plane twice in my life, and both times I really loved it. So I took, a leap of faith, and I'm now in ground school, and I'm enrolled for my private pilot's license.
What?
Thank you. Thank you.
Seriously, you guys, this is so cool. And think about what we've just communicated here with each other, right? How do we, what did you guys ask earlier? What promises can, or no, it was how can we as teenagers build healthy relationships?
Yeah.
It feels to me like we're already building a healthy relationship and we've just met. But it's because I'm very interested in you. I mean, I'm really fascinated with both of you guys. And, what's interesting about it, in my opinion, is that if every single adult were to talk with a teen like I get to with you guys right now, the world would be a much cooler place, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. And if every single friend or foe or person at your school were willing to ask you, hey, what are your plans in life? And you're telling them all about the snakes and all about the planes and snakes on a plane. You guys could work together and make your own movie. But, no, that wouldn't work. But I'm just saying, how interesting is it when we're interested in others? It helps us create those relationships, and especially as teens, not just because, but especially.
This is definitely social information that people, not just teens, need to know, because I mean, of course, teens definitely need to know it. They're very quiet, but this is starting to become something that is into adults as well. I recently just got an Uber ride here. The guy didn't talk to me except for, at the beginning, how are you doing? And have a nice day at the end. And in the middle, I think someone cut him off, and he was like, see, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to, and he would vent about driving. And there was not really, so what's your name? How old are you? What are you into? Stuff like that. It's just starting conversations, making friends is not the first thing people think of when they see other people. And if this society, and it's hard because it's hard to make the first move. I was in that ride for a good 20 minutes thinking, should I say something? Should I wait for the guy to say something? The guy never said anything. I never said anything. Whose fault is it here? It's kind of both of our faults. And so and because everyone's just kind of having that exact same thought, like, should I start this conversation? The other person's going to be thinking the same thing. And so it's best just to start it up because everyone is just shy, just like you. And I'm seeing that a lot with teenagers. And a lot of teenagers blame other people for doing that and saying they ghosted me. And that ticks me off. Mostly because it's just because they're shy, and you should not always have to be the person to start every conversation, and they shouldn't have to be the person starting off every conversation, because you'll notice it's gonna start getting annoying if you're the person who's receiving the start of the conversation and thinking they're too clingy. And if you are being the one starting the conversation, you're like, they don't like me. This definitely has to be something that goes back and forth, just to make sure the other person is assured that you, if that's a word, is sure that you are just as interested in them as they are in you. Initiation to conversation is just a big one.
I love that, Ethan. And what a great example. And
Thank
so
you.
where I might challenge both of you guys and all of our listeners here today, what I would challenge you regarding that question or thought of who starts the conversation, and then, what's our expectation I don't want to be the one that has to do it every time in every place in every situation. Well, I might challenge both of you guys, because you seem to have this personality, to make a promise today to yourself that you will be the one to start the conversation. Make a promise, just subconscious promise. You don't have to write it down. Just say, the next time I'm in an Uber, I'm going to initiate. And you know, what's interesting is once you get into some new relationships and friendships, you don't need to be the one, like you said, Ethan, you don't need to be the one every time that sounds like you're like crazy asking, you're not on an interview every time, but to set the expectation with the person you're in a relationship with, to just say, hey, I've asked you a lot of questions. I don't want to sound like I'm some interviewer. Why don't you ask me some questions? And I know that sounds kind of uncomfortable, but wow, does it work when someone feels they have permission from you to get to know you better?
Exactly.
Ethan, I love your example. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. So just to make sure we get all the questions in before we run out of time, we only have about 15 minutes left. I'm going to ask you the last question. And if you don't mind, I'm so sorry. I don't know if Sean will allow this. If I'll answer the question first.
Do it, please. Let me hear it.
If we want him to answer, I mean, he is our guest. I just feel really strongly about this.
Ethan, I'm giving you permission as the guest to do that. Okay, go. What's the question? How are you going to answer it?
So many teenage relationships deal with drama. How can we avoid or eliminate drama from our relationships? And oh my goodness, a big one, and this is adults too. Drama can be caused by many things. We've already talked about a lot of them, but let's say one teenager, one person initiates it by doing something the other person doesn't like. This person's going to think, I have to get them back so they know how I feel, and they learn the lesson. Unfortunately, that does not work. Lots of time, for example, when driving, if someone cuts you off and the best you got is honk back and keep honking until they, get off the road and drive away from you. It's just not something you should do. There should be no retort to anything that is negative. It's amazing what can happen when someone does something rude to you and you are still nice to them. It is amazing what that can do, and I've learned that and seen that in so many situations, and so many people have looked up to me because I was the bigger person in the situation. And teenagers especially need to know that as well, so that the friendships can stay healthy and they can just leave the water under the bridge, or whatever it's called.
Great answer. I love it.
What about you?
Well, let me ask Everett. Do you have an answer yet? Or are you waiting for mine?
My answer to eliminate drama from relationships is people are who people are. And that means, you can't judge somebody for them being themselves. So, everybody has their own backstory. Everybody has their own family, their own friends.
Religion.
Yeah. Everyone has a difference that separates them from the rest of the group. And how, what they say or what they do is, a sum of that. Whatever they've experienced in the past is how they're going to act, because, you're the sum of the three people you hang out with most. And my reason, to eliminate drama is just because, somebody says something that may upset you, just let them know. Don't be upset about it. If somebody cuts you off, just, be like, I'm sorry, it's okay, let it go, forgive and forget. Just knowing that somebody is themselves and allowing them to be themselves is what we need to do. We can't just say, oh, you said that, I don't really want to hang out with you anymore. Opinions get in the way a lot. And if we don't let opinions in as much as we are right now, a lot more people could be friends still. A lot more people probably could be in the same, romantic relationship. People end things quickly because their opinion gets in the way too fast.
I completely agree. I think my mom is one of the only people I know who really recognizes me for not caring what other people think. Lots of teenagers want to appeal to others, and I going to appeal to myself, and not a lot of people are going to approve, and I don't care. Those who actually will approve will stay with me for a very long time. and that's who I care about. And my mom has been very supportive of that. And anytime I'm super goofy like myself around her, she laughs, she encourages it, and I love that. And it's the best feeling ever. And it's something we need more of, because so many people are just all the same now. I'm not seeing difference in personality very much. I'm not seeing very much difference in likes and thoughts in teenagers, because they want to fit some sort of profile, and they are just so worried about what other people think of them. And I completely understand that. But the more you try to get over that, and the more you realize that whoever doesn't like you for you, that's their problem, not yours, and that's okay. People have their differences of opinions, and if it's not fitting for them to hang out, that's totally fine. There's plenty of other people out there for you that you might have more in common with.
You guys are so wise. I mean, this is as good a conversation as I could have with any adult. I would say it's even better.
Thank you.
Because as you guys are coming into your own, learning what life is about and relationships and stuff, you have not already solidified the way you're going to be forever. And that's what's so nice about talking to smart, authentic, aware teenagers, especially the young men, because you guys just have a different way of thinking. I love hearing your perspective. Your question was very interesting to me. How can we avoid or eliminate drama from our relationships? Well, the first way to eliminate something is to get rid of the person. And that's not probably very likely, So if you can't eliminate the person or avoid the person, let's just say, can you manage the relationship? Can you create a boundary that works for you? And Ethan, you just said it perfectly by the way that you're living your life, the way that your mom says, it's cool how you are. I think it's great. You have created for yourself a boundary that you say, this is within the space that I'm going to live. And if you'd like to be a part of my boundary, then come on in. And that helps you to keep from having too much drama. Unfortunately, when we get on a group text with our friends and then we add more and more friends to it, and then that's where the drama comes in, right? I mean, that's where bullying can happen a lot that I've noticed with my kids. They're on a group text with their 3 best friends, and then all of a sudden more friends come in, or the original 3 all of a sudden go do something else and you're left behind. That happens so much. It breaks my heart for my kids.
Exclusion is terrible.
My daughter, she's a SBO, at the student body officer. She's 15 years old. She's beautiful. She's incredible. And yet she comes home and she's told me about these relationships that she's having a problem with. And I just talked to her and asked her, what are some of your boundaries for yourself? What are the expectations in the relationship? How can we make it so there is less drama? Perhaps sometimes we just need to leave the group. Just leave the group and make sure that you're okay with you. That's why I wrote the book called The Promise to the One. The one is you. Are you keeping promises to yourself? Because I know when you're a teen, you're trying to keep promises to all your friends and every group and the teachers and the school and hockey and, every place that you've got going on. Don't forget yourself. Keep promises to you. And that might sound very, almost too simple of an answer. But if I were to ask your listeners, what are the promises you're keeping for yourself? It might mean that instead of waking up and checking your phone first, it might mean waking up and doing some exercise or doing something for your mental health. Maybe it's reading a good book or it's hearing some good music. Maybe a simple promise is this: I'm going to wake up the time that I said I would last night. And I'm just going to get myself up and go to school. That's a promise kept. And for someone who's a teenager to learn how to do that now will make all the difference in your adulthood as you move forward. So I hope that some of those answers helped. I know we got to wrap up with our time, but
yeah,
you guys are so awesome.
I've had a much easier time keeping up with responsibilities because I have a lot of them. by telling them myself, by telling me to do them myself. I'm not going to do my homework because my teacher says so. I'm not going to keep up on school because my mom says so, to keep up my grades, because everyone around me says so. They say so for a reason, and so I'm going to say it too. And when I do, oh my goodness, people are so self-aware, like they're very self-conscious of their own actions when they know they've done something that they shouldn't be doing. And sometimes when you keep those promises, they're easier to keep when you were the one that made the promise to yourself. It's so much easier, and it's so much easier to keep up with those responsibilities. But that is unfortunately all the time we have. I wish we could talk more, because I absolutely love the conversation I'm having with you and how much you appreciate my personal opinions and thoughts about, drama.
Well, I appreciate you guys. And, there's no reason we can't do this again. I would love to be a guest if you ever bring someone back. But I think what the work you're doing is the right work. And the I in kind, it's so essential, because we need to make promises that we want to make for ourselves, keep them, and it changes the world. You guys are people that make and keep good promises. Even just doing this work, this is helping somebody. And I applaud you for that. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for being a part of it. We will love to have you again, because this conversation, it's just too short. It's just too short. We'd like to thank the incredible Jason Hewlett for sharing his insight on building relationships. For information on having Jason speak at an event or information on this book, The Promise to the One, visit jasonhewlett.com.
Remember, if you want to attract the kind of relationships that are positive, healthy, and loving, work to be that type of person. You can be that type of person. Our core natures are loving, healthy, and positive. Sure, it takes work, but you're worth it.
We should definitely make a part 2 to this and talk about more romantic relationships, because it's such a different type of relationship that are so... I'm sorry, but I need to know more. Anyway.
I agree. Let's do it.
All right. I want to thank my amazing co-host, Everett. Great show today. And also a huge thanks to everyone for listening to this episode of the I in Kind podcast. And remember, you matter.